She took her little girl to the doctor, not knowing he was her child's father asterisk. The unexpected RUN. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital emergency room buzzed overhead as Rachel Morgan pushed through the glass doors. Her 5-year-old daughter Emma clutching her hand. The little girl's face was streaked with tears, her left wrist cradled protectively against her chest. "It's okay, sweetheart," Rachel whispered, trying to keep her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. "The doctor will make it better." Emma sniffled, her big hazel eyes looking up at her mother with complete trust. Rachel's heart squeezed. Those eyes, they reminded her of someone she'd tried so hard to forget. The waiting room was crowded with the usual Thursday afternoon chaos. Rachel approached the reception desk, where a tired-looking nurse glanced up from her computer screen. "My daughter fell from the monkey bars at school," Rachel explained quickly. "Her wrist is swollen. I think it might be broken." The nurse nodded efficiently, taking down Emma's information. "The doctor will see you shortly. Please have a seat." 20 minutes felt like 20 hours as Rachel watched Emma try to be brave, occasionally whimpering when she accidentally moved her injured wrist. Finally, a nurse called them back. "Room 7, the nurse said, leading them down a narrow corridor. "Dr. Sullivan will be with you in just a moment." Rachel's world tilted on its axis. Sullivan, it couldn't be. There were thousands of Sullivans. In the world, this meant nothing. But when the door opened and a tall man with dark hair and sharp green eyes walked in, time seemed to stop completely. James Sullivan froze in the doorway, his clipboard falling from suddenly nerveless fingers. His face went pale, then flushed, his mouth opening and closing without sound. "Rachel," he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Sullivan," Rachel replied coldly, though her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. She pulled Emma closer. "This is Emma. She hurt her wrist at school." James tore his gaze away from Rachel to look at the little girl, and Rachel watched as recognition dawned across his features. Emma had his eyes the exact same shade of green, with flecks of gold. She had his dark hair with its stubborn wave. She even had that same little dimple in her left cheek when she smiled. "Hello, Emma," James said softly, crouching down to her eye level despite the obvious shock still written across his face. "Can you tell me what happened?" "I was trying to do the monkey bars like the big kids," Emma said in a small voice. "But I fell down and landed on my hand. It really hurts." "I bet it does," James said gently. "But you were very brave. Let me take a look, okay?" As James carefully examined Emma's wrist, Rachel watched him struggle to maintain his professional composure. His hands trembled slightly as he gently palpated the swollen area, and she saw him swallow hard several times. "How old is she?" James asked quietly, not meeting Rachel's eyes. 5, Rachel answered, her voice tight. She'd just turned 5 last month. The math was simple. 6 years ago, Rachel and James had been together, young and in love, and planning their future. Then James had gotten accepted into a prestigious medical residency program across the country. And suddenly all those plans had evaporated. He'd said the program was too demanding for a serious relationship. He'd said they should take a break, that they were both too young for such commitment. 2 weeks after he'd left, Rachel had discovered she was pregnant. She'd tried to tell him. She really had. But James had been so focused on his new life, so consumed by his studies, her calls had gone to voicemail. Her messages had gone unanswered. Eventually, Rachel had stopped trying. If he didn't want to be part of her life, why? Should she force him into their child's life? "We need to get an X-ray," James said, his voice rough. "It doesn't look broken, but I want to be certain. The nurse will take you down to radiology." As the nurse led Emma out of the room, Rachel made to follow, but James caught her arm. "Rachel, wait, please." She turned to face him, years of hurt and anger bubbling to the surface. "What do you want, James?" "She?" He couldn't seem to finish the sentence. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Is Emma mine?" Rachel wanted to lie. She wanted to protect Emma from the man who had walked away without a second glance. But looking at James's devastated face, she couldn't do it. "Yes," she whispered. "She's yours." James staggered backward, gripping the examination table for support. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried." Rachel's voice cracked. I called you a dozen times. I left messages. Never responded. You made it clear you didn't want me in your life, so I decided you didn't get to be in hers. I never got any messages about a baby, James protested. If I had known you would have what? Dropped everything and come running back? Rachel laughed bitterly. You said your career was more important than us, James. I wasn't going to beg you to be a father. Silence hung heavy between them. 6 years of hurt and misunderstanding filling the small examination room. I need to be there when she gets her x-ray, Rachel said finally, moving toward the door. Rachel, please, we need to talk about this. Not now, she said firmly. Right now, Emma is all that matters. The x-ray showed no fracture, just a bad sprain. James wrapped Emma's wrist in a soft brace and prescribed children's pain medication. Through it all, Rachel could feel his eyes on them, watching Emma with a mixture of wonder and grief as they prepared to leave. Emma looked up at James with those matching green eyes. Thank you for fixing my arm, Dr. Sullivan. You're very welcome. Sweetheart, James said, his voice thick with emotion. He looked at Rachel. I'd like to follow up in a few days. Make sure the swelling is going down properly. Rachel knew what he was really asking. I'll call to schedule an appointment. Rachel, James said as they reached the door. I know I don't have the right to ask, but please, let me explain. Let me be part of this. Emma tugged on Rachel's hand. Mommy, why does the doctor look so sad? Rachel looked between her daughter and the man who had broken her heart, seeing Emma's future hanging in the balance. She'd spent 5 years being both mother and father. She'd convinced herself they didn't need anyone else. But looking at James's desperate face and thinking about all the father-daughter moments Emma had missed, Rachel felt her resolve wavering. We'll talk, she said finally, but not today. As they walked out of the hospital, Emma chattering about being brave, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that their carefully constructed life had just been turned upside down. James Sullivan was back, and everything was about to change. Building BRIDGS 3 days passed before Rachel gathered the courage to call the hospital. Each night Emma had asked about the nice doctor with the green eyes like mine. And each night Rachel had deflected with vague answers, but she couldn't avoid this forever. James answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting by the phone. Rachel. Emma's wrist needs to be checked, she said, keeping her voice neutral. Can you see her tomorrow? I can see her any time, James replied quickly. Rachel, please, can we talk? Really talk? Against her better judgment, Rachel agreed to meet him at a quiet cafe near the hospital after Emma's appointment. Her mother had agreed to watch Emma for a few hours, giving them time alone. The next morning, Emma was excited to see Dr. Sullivan again. As they sat in the examination room, Rachel watched James interact with their daughter, who was patient and gentle, making Emma giggle as he checked her wrist. The sprain was healing well. You're doing great, Emma, James said, adjusting her brace. Another week and you'll be climbing those monkey bars again, though maybe we should stick to age-appropriate equipment. Emma nodded solemnly. Mommy says I need to be more careful. Your mommy is very smart, James said, glancing at Rachel. Their eyes met, and Rachel felt something shift in her chest after the appointment. Rachel's mother collected Emma, and Rachel found herself sitting across from James in a corner booth of the cafe, 2 cups of coffee growing cold between them. I didn't know, James began without preamble. Rachel, I swear to you, I never got any messages about a pregnancy. Ow! If I had known your phone was always going to voicemail, Rachel interrupted. You were always too busy to talk. Da. What was? I suppose to think. James ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Rachel remembered from their college days. The residency program was brutal. I was working 18-hour days, sometimes more. My phone died constantly. I was drowning, and I thought he paused, pain evident in his expression. I thought it would be easier for both of us if we had a clean break. Easier? Rachel's voice rose slightly. You have no idea what it was like, James. Finding out I was pregnant, alone, and terrified. It's going through the whole pregnancy without you. It's giving birth while my mother held my hand instead of you. Watching Emma grow up and wondering every day if I'd made the right choice, not trying harder to reach you. Tears were streaming down her face now. James reached across the table, hesitating, then gently taking her hand. She didn't pull away.
I'm
"So sorry," he whispered. "Rachel, I'm so incredibly sorry. I was young and stupid and scared. The program consumed everything. By the time I came up for air, I convinced myself you'd moved on, that you were better off without me." "I tried to move on," Rachel admitted. "I dated a little, but no one ever measured up. Emma would ask about her father, and I'd tell her he was a good man who just couldn't be with us. I didn't want her to think she wasn't wanted." James's grip on her hand tightened. "I want her. God, Rachel. I want to know everything about her. What's her favorite color? What does she like to eat? What makes her laugh? Does she like sports or books or art? I've missed 5 years, and I know I can never get that time back. But please, let me be her father now." Rachel studied his face, seeing genuine remorse and desperate hope. "I said, finally," she said finally. "Her favorite food is macaroni and cheese, but only if it's shaped like dinosaurs. She likes to draw and paint, and she's obsessed with learning about space. She wants to be an astronaut when she grows up."
Ow.
James smiled through his own tears, just like you.
Ow.
You always loved looking at the stars. "She's so much like you too," Rachel admitted. "She has your curiosity, your determination. She asked me last night why the moon changes shape. I tried to explain lunar phases, but she wanted to know the scientific details. At 5 years old, they talked for hours, Rachel filling in the gaps of Emma's life, James sharing stories about his residency and the last 6 years. He'd finished his training 2 years ago and had been working at St. Mary's ever since. Wasn't married, wasn't seeing anyone seriously. His life had been all work, trying to fill the void he hadn't even fully understood until he saw Emma. "What do we do now?" Rachel finally asked, as the cafe began to close around them. "I want to be in her life," James said firmly. "As much as you'll let me. I want to get to know my daughter. I want her to know me." "It won't be easy," Rachel warned. "She's used to it being just the two of us. And She hesitated. "I'm scared, James. Scared of what happens if you decide this is too hard. Scared of what happens if you leave again." "I won't leave," James promised. "Not this time. Not ever. Rachel, I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm begging you for one. Not just with Emma, with you too." Rachel's breath caught. "James. Never stopped loving you," he continued. "I tried to convince myself it was just nostalgia, that we were too young, and it wouldn't have worked anyway. But seeing you again, seeing Emma, I know now that I never moved on. I was just existing, waiting for something I didn't even know I was waiting for. I can't promise anything," Rachel said carefully. "Emma has to come first. If we do this, we take it slow. You build a relationship with her first. The rest we'll figure out as we go." James nodded eagerly. "Whatever you want. Whatever pace you're comfortable with." Over the following weeks, James became a regular presence in their lives. He started with short visits an hour here, a trip to the park there. Emma was cautious at first, but James's genuine interest and patience won her over. He brought books about space and spent hours answering her endless questions. He taught her to draw anatomical hearts and showed her how a stethoscope worked. Rachel watched from the sidelines as father and daughter built their relationship. She saw Emma's face light up when James arrived. She saw James's eyes fill with wonder at every small thing he learned about his daughter. And slowly, carefully, she let herself hope. One evening, as they put Emma to bed together for the first time, the little girl looked between her parents with sleepy eyes. "Dr. James?" she asked. She'd started calling him that, not quite ready for Daddy, but moving beyond formal Dr. Sullivan. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you going to be here tomorrow too?" James looked at Rachel, who nodded slightly. "I'd like to be here every day if that's okay with you and your mom." Emma smiled, that dimpled smile she'd inherited from him. "I'd like that. I think Mommy would too." After Emma fell asleep, James and Rachel stood in the hallway outside her room. The house was quiet, peaceful. "Thank you," James said softly, "for giving me this chance, for letting me know her." "She needed you," Rachel replied. I I needed to make sure you were serious, that you weren't going to disappear again. Not going anywhere, James promised. Then, carefully, he reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind Rachel's ear. The same gesture he'd made 1,000 times 6 years ago. And Rachel? I meant what I said at the cafe. I never stopped loving you. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest. James, you don't have to say anything, he interrupted gently. I know trust doesn't come back overnight. I'll wait. I'll wait as long as it takes. But Rachel realized she didn't want to wait anymore. 6 years had been long enough. Never stopped loving you either, she whispered. The kiss was tentative at first, testing boundaries and relearning forgotten rhythms. But then it deepened. 6 years of longing and loss pouring into that single moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. So, James said with a smile that reminded Rachel why she'd fallen for him in the first place. Should we? Tell Emma she's getting her dad full-time. Rachel laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. Let's take it one day at a time. But yes, I think she'd like that. That night, as Rachel lay in bed, she could hear James reading to Emma in the next room. Their daughter's delighted giggles, punctuating his dramatic narration. Her phone buzzed with a text from him. Thank you for our beautiful daughter. Thank you for this second chance. I'll spend every day proving I deserve it. Rachel smiled, typing back. Welcome home, James. Sometimes the longest journeys led right back to where they'd started. Sometimes second chances were worth the wait. Sometimes love really did find its way home. If this story touched your heart even just a little, if you believe that kindness can heal and that love can grow from the most unexpected places, then don't forget to hit that hype button and subscribe to Every Verse Stories for more powerful tales that remind us what truly matters. We share real, emotional, and inspiring stories that speak to the soul. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that move the world. Subscribe, hit, and stay with us for stories that heal. This is Every Verse Stories. See you in the next one.